Hello, and welcome to another episode of the ACP podcast. Today I'm joined by Marten Dollinger, the movie section editor.
Hi, guys.
And I'm also joined by the chief copy editor, Emily Davis.
Hello.
She's the
And
best
my
copy
name
editor.
is Chalky Hornstein. Today we're going to try and focus a little bit more on video games than last time, just because we kind of left those out of the main topics of movies and television last time. Starting with handheld stuff, Emily and I are both very excited about the latest edition of the Ace Attorney series, Dual Destinies, which is coming out this month in about 18 days, if I remember correctly, something like that. So we're both very excited about that.
I'm not very excited about that, but I'm not important.
No, that you're supposed to be excited, Marten.
Okay, fine. I'm excited.
Okay, good.
Fine, boss.
You're not fired. Emily, did you want to lead us in with just a little bit of background information about the game?
Sure. Okay. Well, the Ace Attorney series is a series of sort of visual novel video games, where basically you play as an attorney, and there are a couple different parts of the game. First, you get a client, you investigate their situation, and then it takes it to trial. And you have to break down contradicting testimonies and present evidence to get your client, or prove your client's innocence, for the most part. And the first 3 games in the series came out first for the Game Boy Advance in Japan in the early 2000s, and then were ported to the DS, which is what we got, starring Phoenix Wright, Rookie Attorney, and then a 4th installment.
A visual story game? What is
Yeah,
that?
like there's
What does
there's
that
there's a
mean?
picture. It's very much in the style of they call it a visual novel because you see you play as the protagonist. It's a very point of view thing, and you see them talking and responding to you, and you look around the room and you can move the room and interact with the room.
So, kind of like how I dream.
Yeah, you could put it that way. But yeah, anyway, you were saying, Emily.
Oh, no, I was just saying then there was a 4th installment with a new character, and then we got 2 installments with the Phoenix's rival, the prosecutor Miles Edgeworth, and now, but those were sort of offshoots, and now 5 years after the last proper installment, Apollo Justice, we now get Dual Destinies, which is thrilling.
For those who haven't been playing, also, the main protagonist is a guy named Phoenix Wright, and he was disbarred as an attorney in the 4th game. That's why the character Apollo came in, and he's returning as having just retaken the bar exam 8 years later in this new game. And there's a lot of fans are wondering where the story is going to go with that, because there's a lot of having the game come from the perspective it did. There was a lot of question about there's a lot of characters that didn't come into the 4th game, and so there was a lot of talk of, like, fans always wonder, they consider it a big plot hole and a big point of concern, like, where were all of Phoenix's friends when this horrible thing of being disbarred happened to him. And there's this whole question of, are these questions going to be resolved now that Phoenix is the main protagonist again, and is he going to be in a position to explain these things, or will other people explain for him? There's also a lot of question of just what, has he lost his touch? Is he the same person he was, 8 years ago in terms of being a defense attorney? A lot of his character was this kind of bumbling idiot of sorts that just kind of like babbles his way through cases and just sort of like
Walked his way backwards into winning?
Yeah, it was very much the English major BS way of winning. And there was a movie based on the first game, and it's on YouTube now, or it was for a little while before it got taken down. But one of the top comment was just something to the effect of, like, no wonder all of the characters scream and go crazy and explode when Phoenix beats them. Like, if I'm watching this in the movie, I would hate to lose to this idiot. because you see him just like ruffling through papers, just like so tell me about this, and then he just kind of draws a conclusion from thin air. But his character changed very drastically in the fourth game after losing his attorney badge. He got a little bit darker inside, and he became a little bit more careful and calculated. And he was a lot more confident, and he had this aged kind of aura about him. And the demo shows him reenacting a lot of the same sprites that he had in the first game, which kind of lends itself to the possibility that he might just be falling back into old habits. But I'm very interested. But now he's also got two subordinates underneath him, and so there's the big question of, is he going to be the same almost kind of pushover character he was before, or is he going to, take the sands as more of a mentor? Do you have any thoughts on this, Emily?
Well, I mean, Apollo Justice was such a polarizing game for the fans, primarily because of how Phoenix's character was changed/developed. So I know a lot of people are interested to see how he's going to be in this fifth game. And I mean, I really hope he doesn't revert, because this is 8 years after Trials, the third game. So obviously for him to just be like the same old Phoenix that we played for the first 3 games, that's going to be unrealistic because of just the difference in time. So I'm hoping we'll see some of that confidence, some of that maturity that happened in Apollo Justice, but I also hope we see a lighter, happier Phoenix without the weight of everything that had happened with his disbarment off of his shoulders. But Chalky, have you watched the trailer for the game?
I've watched what I believe to be every trailer that's on YouTube. I could have missed one or two, but
okay. Well, I've been trying to keep myself as spoiler free as possible, so I've been watching as little as possible. But the one I just watched was sort of like the anime style trailer, and we've got Phoenix talking on the phone, and he talks about something like unfinished business or something like that, which is really, I don't know, I'm interested about that because I don't know if he's referring to something related to the events of Apollo Justice and its disbarment, or if this is going to be something new that happened in the ensuing year between these two games. So.
And that'll be interesting. And we know some characters from his past are returning.
Thank goodness.
And I'll try to keep it brief to avoid spoiling you too much. But very early on they brought up that Edgeworth will be coming back, his rival from the first 3 games, and a childhood friend of his, who is mysteriously absent from Apollo Justice, which was like probably one of the biggest ones that fans were upset about, because they have this strange bonds that ties them together. In a lot of ways, Phoenix became an attorney because of Edgeworth, and Edgeworth had his reputation saved by Phoenix many times. And there's multiple fans, myself included, that just think they're secretly sleeping together.
Yes.
But that is all I will ever believe about the game. They mentioned now Phoenix's go-to partner in the first couple games was a girl named Maya, and her cousin Pearl has been confirmed to be in the game through one trailer, which instantly sets off a number of fans just thinking like, this girl who meant so much to him in the past wasn't anywhere in the last game, and now her cousin's here. Like, does that mean like there's no way she wouldn't be in the game? But on the other hand, there's only so many characters that can fit in the game when they've already added so many. And although I kind of I have the feeling that the game probably won't address as many questions, as many characters that we're missing as the fans would like, but I'm almost certain that the game's setting up for a possible third game. Like, I'm feeling the first 3 as one trilogy, and then Apollo starting a second trilogy, with this being the second of a game, if I had to guess, just because the the writers of this game listen to their fans to a certain extent, and they also know that certain things are unfinished, and they have a really good way of, and like one of the things that really brings this series to the cult classic level that it is because the games have a way of taking things that are unanswered in the past or things that may not mean something in the past, and then giving them meaning and giving them that closure. There's a lot of like little things that you can see from other games that will later come back and have meaning. Like there's a scene in Apollo, the fourth game, where Phoenix is in the hospital because he gets into a car accident, and there's this eluded person that's sending him videotapes of this TV show just to like kind of help him pass the time. And I'm almost convinced that that's Maya, and I'm convinced that the game will in some way hints that is Maya. And if Maya doesn't show up, I'm convinced she'll communicate with Phoenix in some way, even in just like a letter or something. I don't know, but there's certain characters like there's no way they wouldn't come back, and that and on a personal note, there are certain characters I just really want to come back just because they've been in every game so far, but more in comic relief roles like Gumshoe, this incompetent detective who crashes through things, and when I say incompetent, I mean like actually incompetent as opposed to Phoenix, who just is wildly uninformed and BSing his way anyway. Phoenix can at least figure stuff out. The game also has a lot of DLC that's coming up, so if there are certain questions that are unresolved by the game, they could easily add episodes to it, which they've already explained they're going to do. And there's they mentioned the possibility of 2 episodes so far, one of which I think is supposed to take place before the series, and one of which is one that will only be in Japan because it relies on a lot of Japanese culture and in-jokes. But I'm sure someone will try to translate that or in some way. Anyway, let's move on. On the note of other handheld games that are coming out this month, literally days before this podcast will go up, Pokemon X and Y are going to come out.
Yay!
And yes. Oh, Martin, you're still here.
Yep. I'm not really big on lawyers, so I don't like them. They're bad to me.
But this one's a defense attorney. He cares about people. He looks for the downtrodden.
No, don't like it. Anyway, about Pokemon.
This game is the first one to take place in a setting very much based in Europe, arguably France, with the first 4 games taking place in somewhere in Japan, and the 5th game taking place, or the 5th generation taking place in America. This game has caught my attention. We know very little about the plot, but there's a lot of stuff that have been leaked online about new mechanics and new characters, new species in the game.
And super species.
Oh yeah, the mega evolution thing.
They digivolved. They said, screw it.
Martin,
we're just like Digimon. We'll go with it.
Martin, you're fired.
No.
Yeah, Emily and I were actually very excited about this earlier. We were talking about there's this new thing called Pokemon Ami. I think am I pronouncing that right? Amy? It's got to be Ami. There's no way that would be Pokemon Amy.
Like M-E? Like, how do you...
A-M-I-E. A-M-I-E.
Yeah, it could be Pokemon Amy. I don't see why not.
So in Pokemon Amy,
Yeah.
the way this works, you can actually like pet them and treat them like actual like animals that you interact with. You can feed them and pet them.
So it's like a Digipet for your it's a
Stop that.
it's a Gigapet.
Stop that.
Gigapet for your Game Boy.
Stop this at once.
Well, it's just what I'm seeing, man.
Yeah, Emily, did you want to chime in for a sec about this one?
It's like all I've wanted from my Pokemon games ever. Since I get so attached to my team, now there's an option where I can pet them, and that's fantastic.
They have this, and it's not just every Pokemon. It's not just certain Pokemon. It's every Pokemon you can pet them, and certain ones. I don't know if you heard this, Emily, but um, different pets will respond to different ways of petting. Like some really like to be patted on their head. Some really like to be pat on their bellies and like have their tummies rubbed.
Oh,
Um, it's it's really cool, and so there's a lot going for the casual gamers in that regard. They're also introducing a lot of species from other games very early on in the game, so characters that might have been
So
harder to get.
I'm
Like,
guessing you're using the touch screen for all this.
yes, you're using the touchscreen, and I think there are some features where you can use the microphone. Yeah, casual gamers will really love this one because you can customize outfits, you can customize hair color and skin color, and in addition to gender, like the previous games. Um, there's also a lot of characters that were harder to get in earlier games, like Smeargle and Farfetch, for example. They're introduced very early on in this game. Um, One thing that really caught my attention, though, is that it seems like this game, more than any of the other ones in this series, are influenced by the outside world and how the people have responded to the game in the past. Most notably on the competitive side, they introduced this new type called Fairy type, which aesthetically just drives me insane because it's a bunch of fairies, and
Isn't
you know I
is
am
wasn't
this.
like Clefairy supposed to be that?
What's funny is that Clefairy is so far at the time of mentioning this one of the only Pokemon that's not a fairy type. It just is, and then never
That's
mind the
weird.
fact that Meryl somehow became a fairy and Mawile somehow became a fairy. A giant sh-
I
jaw
Okay, I can't figure
became a
out
fairy.
Mobile. Is the jaw the thing, or is like the cute face the thing? I don't know what's going on with that at
I think
all.
the jaw's just jetting out of its back, or it's the back of its head, and it's an appendage. Um, but yeah, so fairy type, it's one of those things like it's aesthetically, it drives me wild because it's just this extremely cute thing, and I want to be pretending that I'm not playing a small children's game, feeble as that attempt may be. But the type itself is largely something that ruins a lot of the way the competitive game has worked in the past, and I mean that in a good way. That up until this dragon type was
So
something that was very
it makes
overpowered.
things more playable. Like
Yes,
more
yes.
things are competitive.
And take this with a grain of salt because I'm more of a dabbler in the competitive scene. But the most
Oh,
popular types
oh you.
were stop that. Martin's played in tournaments with me before, but the most powerful types that were like really popular among the big name players were Dragon and Fighting and Dark, all of which are weak to the new Fairy type. And
Back
they're
when
also
psychic stopped being
additionally Poison, which has consistently been pretty terrible,
poison's good
is
enough.
now super effective against Fairy types, which is a big deal. Um, there's they're also weak to Fire, which is wildly unrepresented in the metagame.
Thank
Um,
God. I love fire types, and they never get any
Mhm.
love.
oh well, Charizard's getting plenty of love this game,
It's
more than
about damn
any
time.
other
I mean,
starter.
yeah, kill him with stealth rocks. Who cares?
Two two mega evolutions. I don't know what that deal is, but
The best deal. That would be what that deal is.
yeah, there's two of them. If you haven't seen, one gets Drought, which instantly sets a Drought onto the field upon entry, and then there's another one that's finally a Dragon type after 15 or so years of people wondering.
He's a dragon. Why isn't he a dragon type? Does the same thing go down with Gyarados? Because I mean, he's called the dragon Pokemon. What's up with that?
I haven't seen it, but there could be a Mega Evolution that would make him Dragon type. There's there's so many jokes on the internet because there's this little blob of goo called Goomy that's going to be in the new game, and he's a Dragon type, and then there's this giant lizard thing that is not Dragon type and that is Charizard. But the other thing is that it seems like they're trying as hard as they can to make the competitive scene more accessible to more casual players. Like there's a lot of in-game mechanics that were previously hidden that are now like openly discussed within the game that to allow players to customize stats for Pokemon. And it seems like they're trying to draw people towards the competitive scene just because a lot of the people who consistently play the game are ones who are required to buy the newest one every time to keep up with the competition.
I see a similar thing going on with Magic. They're trying to push more formats and changing up the ban lists and stuff like that. So, yeah, I see how that goes. They want the more people who are playing competitively, the more people who are consistently buying the game instead of just picking it up and doing stuff.
And Magic has a much stronger grasp of that concept than Pokemon does, because Pokemon has had sort of a rise and fall kind of thing where, RBY, Gold, Silver, afterwards they kind of like fell back a little bit, but then like Diamond and Pearl came back, and then they sort of had a falling out, and then
Well, I think part of it is the age group for that, because Magic's kind of seen a resurgence. The thing might go on with Pokemon. It might the same resurgence that was happening with Magic over the past couple of years might happen with Pokemon over the next few. Because if you look at when Magic came out in '93, and Pokemon came out in '93, didn't it?
somewhere around there.
So I guess they came around the same time, but they appealed to different age groups. I don't know. Kind of getting to something with that. Pokemon, when it first started, like when you first had Red, Blue, and Yellow, yeah, you could be competitive with it, but it wasn't designed to be competitive. Like, it was mainly a one-player game. You were more focused on actually playing the game, and it had this cool side feature where you could trade with your friends. Like, the competitive part of it was, like, an extra. So, they obviously hadn't thought of the metagame in the first couple Pokemon games because, psychics beat the crap out of everything.
Oh yeah, and it sounds like they're trying as hard as they can to predict what the new metagame will be, and trying to, make the game as balanced as possible. Which and Fairy type has done along with that. The in-game stat training is going to do a lot with that. But yeah, it seems like and developers have gone on record saying that they're watching the series and trying to like anticipate where it's going to go. It seems like Mega Evolutions, that the thing that you absolutely described as digivolving earlier, is kind of a nod to that as well, because it's also bringing in characters like Absol and Ampharos that haven't seen a lot of competitive play.
Absol is so cool.
And they now have more of a buff that can be used. And then of course you have characters that in no way needed a buff, like Garchomp, that just suddenly get a Mega Evolution just because whatever.
Lame.
Anyway, I wanted to briefly touch on a couple other topics just because we mentioned them in the last podcast. I was going to talk about Girls because I finished this series after Jonah mentioned.
Oh, the show Girls.
Yeah, Jonah said he wanted to talk about Girls last episode.
Well, Jonah's always talking about girls. He's kind of girl crazy.
It's what he does, but
yeah.
He's not here, so we'll keep it brief. But actually, we don't really need to talk about this too much because neither of you watch Girls, but
not the show.
Not the show. No. Everyone watches Girls, normal girls.
Even Emily.
Of course.
I wanted to briefly follow up on How I Met Your Mother, since 3 episodes have passed since our last podcast. I don't know if you guys have been watching this, but the show is sticking to the way that they predicted it in interviews. That it's the entire series. The rest of the series is going to take place over about 56 hours, and each episode kind of has this little like countdown that says like so and so hours before the wedding, so and so hours before the wedding, and it's in a lot of ways it's just lining up to be a very eventful, busy weekend. But they're also filling the space with explaining what happened in the week of time between the end of season 8 and this season, and they're also using a lot that has flashbacks to explain the way characters are reacting to things, and they're bringing back a lot of old faces like James, Barney's gay black brother, and yeah, what do you think of the way they're panning this out, Marten?
I don't know. I mentioned last time it kind of feels like 24, It's a gimmick, but I don't see it working over the entire season. It's like they're trying to bring back the build up that they used to have by like making up for taking so long to getting to this point. So they're trying to recreate that build up that they created with pretty much every episode back when we cared.
They're also introducing the mother as a character, and it looks like everyone but Ted's going to meet the mother before Ted.
Classic.
But yeah, so And they definitely are trying to reclaim some of that lost glory. But um, I mean, originally, I think I mentioned this the last episode. I don't remember, but they originally wanted to have the original contingency plan was that the wedding would take place several episodes over the last season, and then once they got renewed for a ninth season, they just decided to stretch that over the entire thing. Um, and so originally this was going to be much shorter than it was because they didn't even know when the series was going to end when they started writing this. But um, I am kind of looking forward to this because we'll see a little bit more of the characters growing up, and especially, and I hate to say it, but Ted has a lot of growing up to do in the next 56 hours if he's
Oh
going to
boy. Does
deserve
he
the
ever? He
more of the
didn't. He
strings.
didn't really seem to grow much throughout the series, which was frustrating to me. It's pretty static.
He's probably the one that grew the least. I mean, you see the most depth in Barney, who went from this crazy womanizer to committed relationship after dealing with all of his father issues and confronting his father after years and years of abandonment and falsely believing his father was Bob Barker.
Cue anyone on the ACP who starts writing about how he's the real protagonist, because that's what we do.
And Marshall, all of his change. Like we see him entering the series in law school, and now he's gone from being a corporate lawyer to an environmental lawyer to now a judge. It's and watching the evolution of his dad's death influence his career and influence the decisions he makes. He's gotten so much growth, and Ted is this guy who's just perpetually trapped in the I just need to find a woman and then I'll be complete kind of phase, which in some ways makes him sweet because he has a romantic side that's really great, but it also makes him kind of odd. Like there's a lot of things that
He's the
Ted
archetypal
does.
Simon Pegg character.
Yes, there's a lot of things that are in that show that are when Ted does them, they're kind of sweet, and when there's background music, they're kind of sweet. But if you take them out of context, they're a little creepy. Like my
Yeah.
one of my favorite episodes is 10 Sessions, where this girl wants to date him, but she's so busy that she can't take time away from her schedule because anytime she's not spending at work, she's spending it with her daughter. So
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
he makes a 2 minute date for her where like they have a movie, dinner, and all these things in the span of 2 minutes, and it's really cool. But had she shot him down when he asked that, then he would have had all this stuff lined up on the block outside of her office, like just waiting for no reason.
Yeah, I never thought of that possibility.
There's a lot of things that Ted defines is the defining line where if the girl's into it, it's romantic, and if the girl's not into it, it's creepy. And Ted is the epitome of that every time.
That's pretty crazy.
The whole like making it rain for Robin thing as well, or nearly jeopardizing his career for Zoe. Anyway, looks like we're almost out of time, so I'm going to cut this off now. Thank you guys for listening. Once again, my name's Chalky,
I'm Martin.
And I'm Emily.
and this is the ACP. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.